Hi, Bob. Thank you for coming. One of the ways that the Vietnam War was lost in Berkeley is that at that time we had an independent news media that actually had voices from the left that were against the war regularly appearing in America's living rooms at a time when most people only had 3 channels to choose from. Now we have this huge multinational corporate news media that's fractured into 1,000 pieces. And even still, though it is fractured into 1,000 pieces, we can, people from Refuse Fascism can barely get on air, and even then it's only on Fox News. Okay, Democracy Now! Won't even have people from Refuse Fascism on air to speak, much less MSNBC. So my question to you is, what sort of strategies do you think that we can come up with to get through this? Because one of the reasons that we don't see the sort of searching questions like you were asking about Pence, like, do you believe in evolution, are not asked is because the corporations that control our news media don't want them to be asked. They want that status quo to be maintained, and they will instruct their news professionals, half of whom don't even have journalism degrees, to maintain that status quo.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very important question. Well, I think there are different elements to the strategy. For one thing, people who do have some prominence, and it is hard for these media, these dominating media you're talking about, to ignore, have to be struggled with and won, to use their own influence to get on those channels and those networks and put this out. For example, I'm thinking of back in the, I don't remember exactly when it was, but some time ago, but later than the 60s, I remember there was this scene on television where the LA sheriffs were brutally beating this immigrant. And Marlon Brando called up Larry King, who was then on CNN, and said, I want to come on and talk about this. And he did. And then they attacked him, for other things. But that's one example where you struggle with people who do have the kind of prominence that it's hard. In other words, look, a lot of this is you're dealing with contradictions, and we have to know how to understand and deal with them well. The contradiction is that the media is, in fact, an instrument of the ruling forces of this system, but it pretends to be a free press. It pretends to be the voice of the people, and so on, so on, so on and so forth. So that's a contradiction you have to, figure out how to turn to advantage. How do you take advantage of the aspect where they're pretending to be, a free press and not to be an official state media or whatever, and that's what someone like Marlon Brando did. He said, okay, look, if you refuse to have me on here, then you're going to expose yourself as what you are. So they didn't want to not have Marlon Brando on because he had enough prominence that he would find other ways to let it be known what he wanted to say, and that they wouldn't let him say it in that medium. So that's one leg or one element I can see. Another is, hey, let's I know some of this is done by Refuse Fascism with the panels at Fox News, but how about look, someone like Amy Goodman does some good things, but she also has a certain she has a certain limited framework that she wants things to stay within. Let's put it that way. Certain people she wants to promote, and she wants to promote those things that they're affiliated with, like, ultimately the Democratic Party, to just get right down to it. But, I saw the other day she had on Michael Moore, who's got his problems too. No, look, we don't get perfect people, okay? People are contradictory, and they do good things one minute, and then the next minute they fall back into things that aren't helpful. But I did notice that he was on Amy Goodman, and he was saying some stuff that was wrong about why Trump got elected, this whole idea about the white working class is suffering so badly economically. And yes, there are people in Appalachia and other places, but that's not essentially what elected Trump. Even though, he comes from a different place than I do, I did think the article by Ta-Nehisi Coates in the Atlantic got a lot more to the truth of this, including pointing out that every category of white people that you could think of voted for Trump. Now, some of them, like people with college degrees, it was a very small majority. In others, it was a bigger majority. But every single category of white people voted for Trump. That's why he said Trump is the first white president. You know, he ran openly on the basis of white supremacy. So I don't agree with Michael Moore about that, and that's tied in with some deeper things that I don't agree with him about. But he was saying some important things. I guess he's doing this show on Broadway, The Terms of My Surrender, which is, you know, laying out from his point of view what would be required to get him to stop protesting, I guess is the essence of it. I don't know if people have gone to that show, but, you know, he does involve the audience. And, you know, if they have, good. And if we should keep going back and get up and make statements. You know, I will say that on Amy Goodman, he was, you know, in addition to some of the things he said I thought were really wrong, he was saying some very important things. Including, he said, look, Trump is going to start a war. And when he starts a war, don't listen to the Democratic Party establishment that tells you have to support this war. Get out and protest this war. Mm-hmm. Well, that was a good and important thing he said. And he said, look, you know, I don't think this is the exact analogy, but it's coming from a good place. Look, we're in the French resistance now, referring to the French resistance against the Nazi occupation of France in World War II. You know, we got to make sacrifices, you know, and obviously he's talking to a certain stratum of people. They said, you know, your kids got to be driven to soccer class. They can walk for a year. We got to get out. You know, you're having trouble in your marriage, you know, got to go to marriage counseling. Get along for another year. We got to get out of here. You know, and you could see, you know, what he was getting at. You know, he was doing it with a certain amount of humor. But, you know, he was saying, look, this is what we got to do. And this is important. So people like that, we should be trying different. We should be going to the front of that show and leafleting with, you know, with the Refuse Fascism material. We should be going inside and getting up and in a friendly way, not in an antagonistic way, speaking up from the audience, you know, and calling on him to endorse and support and call on other people to be part of this. We should try to talk to him directly. And there are all different kinds of ways. You know, Amy Goodman, well, if she steadfastly refuses to put people from Refuse Fascism on there, some people from Refuse Fascism should go down to where she's broadcasting and make a stink. You know, and say, put us on there. You know, it's not acceptable. I mean, it's not acceptable that you don't let this, you know, voice be out there, and that you say that you stand for certain things. Well, this is, you know, something that falls within what you claim to stand for. So, I mean, the most I've seen is she does let a lot of the no signs. She'll show them, but she won't let people come on. Okay, well, you know, we don't have to accept that. You don't have to treat her as if she's in the camp of the enemy, but it's wrong what she's doing. We don't have to accept it. You know, look, we ourselves have to act, and I'm not saying people aren't, but I'm just saying this is an important principle for us. We have to mean what we say, and we have to act on the basis of what we're saying to other people. We're saying that, you know, this is a deadly serious matter. We're saying that it's intolerable that this regime remain in power. We're saying that, you know that we can't just go along with a normal routine. Well, then we can't. Then we have to go and do things that are way outside the norms of what we're used to doing also. Find creative ways where people are, you know, broadly speaking on the right side of things, but they're doing things wrong. We should call them out, but not treat them like the enemy. We should struggle against them. We should expose it when they do things that are wrong, and not just wrong, but harmful, that hurt what needs to happen, without pushing them into the camp of the enemy. There are a lot of creative things, but, you know, it requires of us that we act in accordance with what we're saying is the case, which it is in fact the case. So there are a lot of different stratagems, if you want to use that word. Getting people who do have prominence, you know, pushing on them. Look, I heard a story, and, you know, somebody, you know, I referred during my talk to the article I wrote, the question and challenge for Paul Krugman and all those concerned about the future of humanity. You know, I heard a story about somebody went to talk to somebody about that article, and they said, and the person they were talking to said, well, what does Paul think of this article? Because they know Paul Krugman. And the answer was, well, we sent it to him, but we haven't heard an answer. That's not good enough. You know, you should say to that person, well, you know, that's what's happened. How about you? Since you know him, how about you send the article to him? How about you tell him this is something important you ought to read? How about you help us, you know, getting to where we can sit down and talk with him? There are a lot of things people can do that don't require them, you know, you know, from our point of view, to join a revolution tomorrow, you know, or to become full-time activists and refuse fascism tomorrow. We should think creatively. How can people contribute in ways that correspond to what they, you know, can be shown would be important for them to do, without it being a full commitment? Then we can struggle. You need to get fully committed, but you know, in the meantime, let's find ways that people can contribute who would like to contribute, but we don't help them, you know, find the ways to do that. So we need to get better at that also, you know. And so all these different kind of things. The main current running through all this, if you will, is that we really have to be creative because the situation demands it of us. We have to not accept, you know, no, yes, but we have to not accept no for an answer, on a different plane, if you know what I mean.